Let us set the stage with the absolute heartbreak that is currently unfolding for little James. As we have seen, the poor boy's world has just been entirely shattered. Cody Bell had to sit him down and deliver the soul-crushing news that the man he thought was his father, the man he had grown to love and trust, was actually an imposter. The revelation that the fake Nathan was actually his uncle, Cassius Faison, and that Cassius is now supposedly dead is a trauma that no child should ever have to endure. James is currently reeling, lashing out in denial, and desperately needing his mother. But where is Maxie? She is conveniently out of town, leaving her son to navigate this monumental grief completely alone. It seems like the writers have deliberately isolated James to set up an even more catastrophic emotional explosion. This brings us to the hush-hush rumor that has been keeping me awake at night. What if Maxie's never coming back? I know, it sounds unthinkable, but in the soap world, a prolonged absence without a concrete return date is often the canary in the coal mine. The truth might be way more complicated than a simple vacation or a business trip. What if the writers have decided to write Maxie off completely? The timing is incredibly suspicious. Just as James faces the biggest crisis of his young life, his mother is nowhere to be found. High chances are, this is a calculated narrative choice to transition James into a tragic orphan storyline. If they were going to bring Maxie back, they would have done it for the Cassius fallout. The fact that they have kept her away is a glaring red flag that something much darker is on the horizon. We all assume that Maxie and Spinelli are currently enjoying a romantic getaway, blissfully unaware of the chaos unfolding back in Port Charles. But what if this idyllic trip is actually the setting for a horrific tragedy? It seems like the perfect setup for an off-screen disaster. The unconfirmed leaks suggest that Spinelli and Maxie might have ventured out for an adventurous excursion, perhaps a hiking trip in the mountains or a secluded beach vacation. What if a sudden freak accident occurs? We have heard behind-the-scenes whispers that the writers are looking for a way to write the character out without needing the actress on set. A fatal accident while out of town fits this requirement perfectly. It is a terrifying thought, but high chances are the Maxie we know and love might have already graced our screens for the final time without us even realizing it. Let us theorize about how this could actually play out in the narrative. What if Maxie slips and falls during a treacherous hike, tumbling out of Spinelli's reach before he can save her? Or what if she encounters a sudden riptide while swimming, and despite Spinelli's desperate attempts, she is pulled under? These types of off-screen deaths are a staple in daytime television when a drastic storyline shift is required. The truth might be way more complicated, perhaps involving a sudden medical emergency or a car crash, but an outdoor accident provides the high-stakes drama the show thrives on. Hi, chances are, the writers want a scenario that leaves Spinelli completely helpless, burdened with intense survivor's guilt, and forced to return to Port Charles with the heaviest burden imaginable. Now, picture this agonizing scene. The door to the Scorpio Jones residence slowly opens, but instead of the happy couple returning from their trip, it is just Spinelli. He is pale, trembling, and completely shattered. The hush-hush rumor suggests that Damien Spinelli will return to Port Charles alone, carrying a grief so profound that it will break the hearts of every viewer watching. What if he has to walk into that house, look around at the life he and Maxie were building, and realize it is all gone forever? The emotional weight of this unconfirmed leak is absolutely staggering. It seems like the writers are preparing for a performance of a lifetime from the actor playing Spinelli. The quirky, optimistic tech genius would be plunged into an abyss of darkness, forever changed by the trauma of losing the love of his life in such a sudden, senseless manner. But the true horror of this drastic storyline shift lies in what Spinelli must do next. He has to tell James. High chances are, this will be the most devastating scene in recent show history. James just lost his fake father, his uncle, and his entire sense of security. Now, Spinelli, choking on his own tears, will have to sit this fragile, traumatized boy down and tell him that his mother is never coming home. What if James absolutely refuses to believe it? What if he begs Spinelli to take him to her, just like he lashed out at Cody? The truth might be way more complicated, as James might initially blame Spinelli for not saving her. It seems like the writers are intentionally stacking tragedies onto this child to create a compelling, deeply emotional narrative centered around grief, loss, and eventual resilience. Let us dissect the severe psychological toll this would take on young James. He is a child who has already been defined by the ghost of a father he never knew. Then he was given a miracle when Nathan seemingly returned. But that miracle was ripped away and exposed as a cruel, twisted lie orchestrated by Cassius Phazon. Just as he is trying to process the betrayal of the fake Nathan, the ultimate blow lands. His mother, his rock, his constant source of unconditional love, is snatched away by a random accident. High chances are James will completely shut down. What if he stops speaking entirely? What if he develops severe behavioral issues, lashing out at Cody, Spinelli, and anyone who tries to comfort him? It seems like this unconfirmed leak is setting the stage for a long-term storyline exploring childhood trauma, turning James into one of the most tragic figures in Port Charles history. If this behind-the-scenes whisper proves true, James will officially be an orphan. Yes, he has a vast support system, but the core of his nuclear family will be completely obliterated. The truth might be way more complicated than just a sad storyline. It could be a complete reboot of the character's trajectory. What if James begins to deeply internalize the dark Phazon legacy? With both of his biological parents gone, and the trauma of Cassius's deception fresh in his mind, James might start to wonder if he is cursed. High chances are, the writers want to isolate James emotionally so that he has to rebuild his identity from scratch. It is a drastic storyline shift, but one that provides endless dramatic material for years to come as James grows up in the shadow of unimaginable loss. We must also consider the explosive reaction of Liesel Obrecht. She is currently missing and held captive, but once she is freed and learns of this tragedy, the fallout will be nuclear. Maxie was the mother of her beloved grandson, her final living connection to Nathan. What if Liesel blames Spinelli for the accident? High chances are, Liesel will unleash a fury unlike anything we have ever seen, channeling all her grief over Nathan and Britt into fiercely protecting James. It seems like Liesel will view James as her sole reason for living. The truth might be way more complicated, as Liesel's overprotective nature could suffocate James, leading to intense custody battles or family friction. If this hush-hush rumor is accurate, Liesel's grief will be a terrifying, unpredictable force of nature that will shake Port Charles to its core. And then there is Felicia Scorpio. My heart aches just thinking about what this unconfirmed leak means for her. She has already endured so much heartache, and losing her daughter in a freak accident would be an unbearable cruelty. What if Felicia completely breaks down, unable to function? Or what if, conversely, she finds a well of unimaginable strength to become the surrogate mother James so desperately needs? High chances are Felicia and Mac will step up to raise James, Georgie, and Bailey. But the truth might be way more complicated. What if Felicia harbors silent resentment towards Spinelli? What if the stress of raising 3 grieving children fractures her own marriage? It seems like the writers are using Maxie's potential exit to generate massive ripple effects across the entire Scorpio Jones family, testing their bonds in the most brutal way possible. Despite the potential blame and his own crushing guilt, Spinelli will undoubtedly refuse to abandon James. He has always loved Maxie's children as his own. What if Spinelli dedicates the rest of his life to honoring Maxie's memory by raising James alongside his siblings? High chances are we will see a beautiful, albeit heartbreaking, bond form between Spinelli and the orphaned boy. However, it seems like Spinelli will have to fight for his place in James's life, especially with strong personalities like Liesel and Felicia hovering closely. The truth might be way more complicated, as Spinelli's own mental health could severely deteriorate under the weight of his survivor's guilt. If this drastic storyline shift happens, Spinelli's journey from a grieving partner to a resilient surrogate father will be one of the most compelling arcs on daytime television. The sheer magnitude of this hush-hush rumor cannot be overstated. Removing Maxie from the canvas permanently would leave a gaping hole in the show's dynamic. She is a legacy character, a fashion icon, and the emotional anchor for multiple families. What if the writers are making a colossal mistake? High chances are the fan backlash would be swift and severe. Yet, the truth might be way more complicated. Sometimes, soap operas execute these devastating exits to inject a necessary dose of high-stakes reality into the narrative. It seems like the showrunners might believe that the emotional payoff of James's orphan storyline and Spinelli's grief justifies the tragic loss of the character. If this unconfirmed leak is indeed the blueprint for the upcoming months, we are about to witness an era of profound sorrow and transformative drama in Port Charles. So, My dear viewers, brace yourselves for the impending storm. The pieces are all falling into place, and the silence surrounding Kirsten Storms' status is deafening. What if the next time we see Spinelli, he is wearing black and carrying a shattered heart? Hi, chances are, the tragedy of James losing his mother is already written in stone, waiting to be unleashed upon us. The truth might be way more complicated, and perhaps a miracle will happen, but I urge you not to hold your breath. It seems like the golden days of Maxie Jones are fading into the darkness, leaving behind a legacy of tears. Keep your eyes peeled and your tissues ready, because if these behind-the-scenes whispers are true, Port Charles is about to be drowning in grief, and no one will be spared from the devastating fallout. Watch your backs, ladies, because the writers are taking no prisoners this season.